Hi, a continuation of that quick 7-minute film. Making these films for YouTube, I am getting throttled here and there. I am offloading data, screens, and whatever, but I do have to lecture across a number of different software applications. So I got to do this. Furthermore, how are we inspired? We're going down the rabbit hole into data. I usually write keywords. Like this is a project I was doing for an Elizabethan play and a dance, and I knew I had to come in on budget, and I need to show space, and I'm a big fan of the golden section and how to structure reality, and one of the major themes are about chaos and order being this sort of rotating wheel, this kind of Ouroboros, this dragon eating its tail between chaos and order, and the effects of a neoliberal economy, the one, neoliberal capitalist culture which we live in, that we implicitly says we can quantify everything, including the things most precious to us, spouses, lovers, children's, friends, families, whatever, that they have a shelf life, they have a number. Don't be so romantic to say nothing out there has a number. And to speak to the Maori who wanted to legally define a river as a being because they wanted the river and the environment to be treated as an entity, we want to treat the internet as a public, non-commercial entity, apart from the Bezoses, the Musks, the Zuckerbergs, the Googles, and say this is a stream flows under, let's go get the things. So Elizabethan, I like to think in totalities. That's just the way my mind works. Syncretically, gestalt, figure, ground, and I'm looking for the ground here. So I'm looking for Renaissance, Elizabethan. Oh, this was a online production also. So I'm working on two or three things, and I'm going down the internet rabbit hole to take a look at what's down there today. I mean, billions. Until the year 2003, the entirety of human analog production was recorded. After that, the biddage, the teraflop biddage, or whatever the high number to the 43rd, I think, zeros, um, is replicated mid century. It did plateau out. It was replicated every 3 days, and now it is said that we double that information exponentially every 3 hours. Rough, sort of numbers behind that. So let's go. Um, King Lear, I had a dance project. I was doing Boccaccio's Decameron. I'm looking. Here are these Renaissance. I'm going to teach in Italy again this summer. Looking at these Renaissance portraits, what makes them familiar yet distant? Familiarity is the use of painterly sculpting out void with shadow on the flatness. It's called the integrity of the picture plane. The datum in her hair, the net hair, takes us back to the notion of 2D. So we have the 3D sculpting of her face, and we go back to 2D. I'm looking at ways of seeing. What were the ways? Here's a little street hawker that's going around with a vision system in America or England or wherever. Contemporary art. I look at this stuff and I just go. I type in one of those words or series of words and I do an image search. And here's the other, we'll think of binaries, or they're talking about this dragon that eats its tail, between chaos and control, composition, beauty, clarity. Um, One without the other is nothing. Clarity is a superficial entity without depth or the chaos of depth. So I'm looking at old ways of looking. This reminds me of VR, which is part of my research direction. VR, AR, not only in the arts, but in terms of UX, usability, user interface, and things like that. I've consulted in Korea to Samsung, LG, on certain aspects of usability. Paolo Uccello. There was a desire by the Renaissance masters, and we're looking at a piece in Renaissance England to to keep making order of the fantastic beauty around them, the beauty of a chalice. And the artists were also kind of technicians. I contend they were designers. The realm between arts and sciences is this design realm, which implies use, does not always imply ownership, as the first video was talking about. And so we see a number of these portraits, a fantastic sort of interest in play, but the sculpting of the face. Paolo Uccello, the Battle of San Romano. Of course, this was in my freshman art history course. You see the way the dead bodies and the lines express the order of the grid beneath the chaos of war. The opulence, what they're wearing, the newfound um, hubris of the Italian city-state. Um, uh, I think it's Gebser or Spengler uses a modality, a shift in perception. We went from the Magian epoch, which is found in Plato's cave, such that life is the life we see and perceive will always be illusions created by some evil genius or something. Descartes and the Renaissance painters and so forth said, no, 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 paradigm shift. We have this perspectival approach to history ourselves, and everything, everywhere you look, there was this perspectival inclination. I think it's Gebser in Ever Present Origin. Very, very dense and fascinating book on treating history as epochs. And I love getting the big ideas, the big swoops, the big inclusions. Seeing devices at this time, there are all sorts of. This is a camera obscura bringing in reality, ordering it, and also I'm working with dance, so I'm thinking, what is the biggest beauty for the buck? Dance is not always beautiful, but it is amazing. Like uh, Asimov or Arthur Clarke has said, one of the functions of technology is to come close or appear to be magic. One of the functions of really refined and devoted and practiced works of art, technically or even inspirationally, is that they approach a magic. So this fabric to me is very magical. And here's another binary, the binary between a statement, a voice, of an act of will, an act of agency, as a collaborator, as a lonely painter in your lonely studio, and the notion that we have to collaborate, and the notion that that creative space was not a safe space, was not a retreat, was not a hermit's dwelling, that we should, could, would come out and talk to a public. This is the misconception behind expensive neoliberal capitalist colleges. I saw it today. Most are in the $75,000. And it's just absurd, grotesque. You don't go to these places to create a safe space. You go for your transformation. The professors don't hand you a product. They are midwives who allow you into this transformation, which might or might not happen, regardless of the price. So this is currently, does money destroy everything? I don't know. Maybe a concept of ownership. The concept of ownership is, as I said earlier, a concept of getting rid, possibly, probably, eventually getting rid of something. That's why people go to college, to maybe own that knowledge in order to resell it to be doctors, lawyers, butcher, bakers, candlestick makers. Increasingly, people live in houses imagining what a future buyer would have. We never live in the present. Here, my present is I need something cheap. I need it stored, I need to travel with it, and I need it to be utterly beautiful and true and raising discourse. As I said earlier, I'm concerned about raising discourses with my spaces and so forth, with my collaborations, with my audience, with my future self. That's how I geek out with these things I've refined over the years. I've also refined a sense of being a Swiss Army knife myself, realizing that in neoliberal capitalist economies, cultures, markets disappear. You young people, I always say this, are looking to de-skill me, an older generation. That's part of the process. That the use of the internet, now what we do with it in technology, might not make it better, but part of the agenda is for you guys to de-skill me, to knock me out of jobs that you guys want. That's the most banal way to put it. So it'll take up getting up very early to do that with me. So I'm looking for the inspiration of modern photography that's done up in the way of the Renaissance. And there was an interesting sight of how people around the COVID room alone dressed up with ordinary things to resemble paintings. It was amazing. These things are amazingly beautiful, in addition to being amazingly composed. Again, the sculpted face against the very surface patterned costume. I do think of everything. I think of architecture, I think of design, I think of color. I have ceramics here, I have paintings here, I draw every day. Part of what I wanted you to do is to keep a sketchbook. These are my tonal studies with a watercolor crayon, just sitting on a subway or sitting at a restaurant out in public or sitting at home, looking at things, not looking at things, looking at my memory. I am continually moving in. This is about the size I want you guys to have for a sketchbook. I do even do my notes in terms of what would trigger better memories of it by making shapes. And then I also, this is experiment with different media. This is a very heavy charcoal pencil of doing my subway sketches. I have a whole book on subway sketches. The face is, a human face is extremely interesting in terms of things such as aesthetics, gender portrayals, the relationship of face to the body, the ability to remember faces, the ability to look into faces. I am, as much as I've studied the structure of faces, I'm somewhat poor at remembering faces. Some people are geniuses at it, but therefore, I'll take my beloved fountain pens and just go through subways or downtown, look at faces, sitting across from people I'm having dinner or lunch with, and do these things. So not only do I look at these images, I compose. I compose and move and shape, sit back for a couple seconds, a minute, go like, move forward. To me, this sketchbook is a river. I have upstairs room with, I do one of these every 3 months. That's my little OCD ritualized behavior on that. If I do more, if I'm traveling to Italy or somewhere and I'm overstimulated, I just add papers to this one, almost the size of a thick passport. Fits in the back pocket. It's with me every day. It's never been pickpocketed. I don't know. I've lost one on a bike once, and these people in the city called me up and said, "We got your sketchbook." Interesting thing. I'll do faces. My current favorite is the Caran d'Ache Swiss watercolor pencil. Do I have one here? No, I don't. I always have one in my pocket. And I carry, yeah, here we go. In this little leather wrapper, I carry russet and I carry some form of blue. And these Chinese reservoir brushes are worth their weight in gold. So that's my gig. I love two color fountain pens. I love the Caran d'Ache. I carry the Chinese reservoir, which has the little water, right? You've seen it, and you squish it. Don't get it at the art store because they'll be charging $8 to $14 for it. Get it online at eBay, and they'll be like $2 or $3 a pop. I try for a chisel brush in this, and just the benefit of the Caran d'Ache and the benefit of the fountain pen is that ink moves. It keeps moving. So looking at these things, doing my little portraits, doing my little daily writing of categorizing, making again the binary, the yin yang, making order out of chaos. I have little OCD rituals I do to add a datum, a sense of clarity, maybe, to my life, even as the ticker's going off, even in terms of falling down rabbit holes, looking for images for myself and collaborators. Here's a riff, a spatial riff on the notion of the staircase. I'm thinking of a building. I'm thinking of a set for theater, thinking of a set for movie. I'm actually not even seeing something out there in the real world. I might have been triggered by some idea I saw online or walking through Manhattan. But what I am doing is building it building it blind, I call it, building it from its basic principles, top, bottom, side, figure, ground, rendering. This is an isometric rendering, which I want all of you guys to do. I'll show you that in a further video, how to take this. Is this complicated and chaotic? Yes. Is it complicated and beautiful? Yes. Is it complicated and fulfilling? Yes. Do not. I often encounter the average STEM student in the neoliberal, capitalistic, quantifying, deterministic, materialist culture. Just show me what the end is, and they hope to bean count their way to the end. Just show me what you want, and then I'll back up and I'll do what you want. Like it's some sort of a priori chemistry test. It's complicated. Biology is complicated. But in the arts, the arrival is actually your own life, your will, your voice, and how you use that voice with the other. Here's one in a black watercolor pencil. Then I get back to what we'll get into this problem. It's called the problem of the square. How these things are composed individually, how they're composed on the paper, how they're composed in your mind's eye, how there's a direct reaction to the canvas, which is part of modernist painting, which Gebser in Ever Present Origins says that the Renaissance mentality arrived, men and women, in Italy from the city-state with other innovations such as double-digit accounting and other ways of looking at a return back to classical times, looking at Greek sculptures. Michelangelo was a notorious copier of Greek originals, Greek Roman originals for the Pope. The Laocoon is controversial in the Vatican because it might have been done by Michelangelo. Anyway, that's how they made their gigs. Anyway, we go to pure composition, looking at something that will continue, inspire you. I tell young people, I've been a designer perhaps since I'm 3 years old, having to make the little chipboard blocky things for urban design, landscape architecture projects for my dad. Used to go in and put the glue on it, make the little things out of chipboard and cardboard and corrugated cardboard, make little buildings. That's a direct language with yourself. What's the agenda? Okay, I think I got it. Okay, but the agenda is not going to imprison me. What's the aspect of creativity? Sky's the limit. Okay, I think I get it. What is a stopping point, like the timer I set here? Um, hey man, it's when you feel like it, or when you have that discussion with your collaborators. This, in this case, it was his draftsman, to say, hey, you're doing a good job, do more of this, and cutting up, looking at form, more subway portraits in both blue and dinner subway portraits, people I know. um, and then I'll write in this ochre ink. I'm turned on by the ancient Da Vinci. I got kind of a first Da Vinci book when I was 4. Love the color of his writing. Love the idea that he wrote mirror image like a dyslexic. In code is one thing, but maybe he was just a dyslexic. Um, and continually using the chronology, let's start here, of going through shapes and comparing shapes in one drawing with each other, so that it is a movement, it's a reference of the thing. These things are springing from the blind mind's eye, I call it again. There's nothing in there, fog. What do I have to make? I start making something called up out of the subconscious, and then I refer one to the other, and then I stop once I finish the page. I say, good for today. Um, so the creative impulse, we've seen these before. Um, and notes and notes and notes and notes. I'm a big fan. I said an earlier thing about the semiotic square. All SSP, no SSP, some SSP, some SS not P. I was bad in math in middle school, high school, but then took the one class, symbolic logic, and said, "Wow, this idea of a cogent, logically cohesive statement is actually gorgeous. And it's actually what the Renaissance people, including men and women in this, and people from outside the realms of, at least we forget that the Renaissance was partially fueled, late Renaissance, by all of the gold brought in from Mesoamerica. So we continue. I want you to keep a sketchbook and just your agenda. Go. Just do it. Respond, react. I don't care if you want to be a butcher or baker when you grow up. Do it now. And I particularly like, I'm blessed by my Stony Brook students, who are very, very incredible individuals, in general, in kind of a flawed meritocracy, but it's getting there. But beyond bean counters, I have these people who have been in bean counting disciplines, and they say, "Oh, I feel alive in this class. What's going on?" They say, "Because you're listening to yourself. You're treating yourself as that Maori river. It's not your subconscious is not something to be exploited. Your memory is not something to exploit so you can regurgitate things. You're actually taking the time to expand this notion of the self through time, and it's a beautiful thing. Let's go through time. So I got to work on dance. I got to get fabric, take fabric, looking at all these dancers, pulling off anything, something that strikes you in a half a second is usually a good thing in design. I got to make dance structural, as in this. I got to make it projectable. So I'm garnering these things. I'm taking all the platonic solids, understanding, going back and forth. Whatever it is, I'm taking it off, taking it off, taking it off, putting it into a file, which is what I want you to do. Perspective made obvious. The chaos of the Italian brain-like city, certainly Venice's, certainly the hill towns like Assisi, are different from the Roman plan towns, such as Fiesole, contrasted to Florence. Fiesole is a hill town, it's Etruscan, it's meant to defend. Once the enemy does get in, it's brain like, it's maze like, and they can pick off the enemy. The Romans built the towns on the plain. They built it in very rigid grids because they had perfected the not a type of phalanx. So because they perfected a type of technology of war, they could defend open things, grids, structured information. That's interesting because now cities are returning back to that. The protective walls, which used to give identity to cities, are being torn down, and people realize that the canon has kind of made this obsolete. And uh, this is all a product of this new perspectival culture. I'll look at modern works, just how her body is shaped from the dark, what is striking. I'll look at ancient work, then compare her to just the laborious sort of attention to detail. I'll think of the strokes I'm going to have to make to create shading and modeling and figure and ground and gestalt and all that other good things. I'm thinking of the intrinsic value. This is a sculpture of the body, no, this is a dance, I think. Um, how what an amazing work of art a body is, as an evolutionary thing, a thing that's looking for order, even though there's some vestigial chaotic elements about it. We were only supposed to live up until our 30s, and now we're living into our 80s and beyond. And now with that film, we're talking about living to 150 years, which will add its chaos. The Renaissance mind said, if you add order here, chaos will happen over there. And some of the first people who were approaching that chaos are not scientists, but artists. People want to use things. This is the Botticelli and the mythic concerns. Out of Lear, it's interesting to see a mythical world, magical, mythical, perspectival. A perspectival world is what Gebser says that we approach with Cubist painting, the Paris Commune, the invention of, or at least the approach of physics of Einstein and Niels Bohr in the early 20th century. People say the world's relative. That's why I set the timer. That's why I go down these rabbit holes to come back out. That's why, hopefully, I don't binge Netflix or TikTok, because the a perspectival world says, "Hey, this is a world of worlds. This is a world of mazes." And I contend we have to get out to not just empathize with people, have a sense of nobility about where we're going, whether we're rich or poor or whatever, and separate use from exchange. Ownership, which is to get rid of. So these painters, Botticelli, they're all commissioned by the church or rich folks or whatever, and that's how they paid the rent or bought things or had kids and all of that notion of replicating. But in the replication, as in the case of Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Botticelli, Raphael, Mantegna, these people are obsessed and lucky, as you see in their diaries, that they're using their skills to fuel their curiosity. Often they weren't, a lot of these people died penniless. They could give two figs about, you know, driving the next SUV, a Land Rover. That they were concerned with feeding their curiosity. And this is kind of what I want to inspire you guys. Music, more shrouds, shields. To me, it veils that reality, or veils both the complexity, control, beauty of the evolutionary beauty of the human body in this shrouding that can be projected on, that can reframe discussions about 3D, that can portend to 4D, the element of time, as Maxwell, Einstein, and certainly what Gebser says about the aperspectival, the Cubist painters, the post-impressionists, Gauguin, Van Gogh, some more of the decorative. Seurat was breaking down color. It's your voice that will break down this onslaught of realities toward you. which is fun. So look at this compositional use of fabric structurally creates these dynamics. I want you to get to the state of, get rid of the bean counting mind and say, "Ooh, what's going on here? How can I quantify this?" Just go like, is it beauty? Is it truth? Is it discussion? What the hell's going on here? It's all of those things, but to get rid of the over, let's call it the Midas mind of turning everything into the gold of numbers. Kobiensky again. The map is not the territory. Or one of my favorite quotes by Kobiensky is a great Polish American, I'm mispronouncing the name, of course, is the map is not the territory, as in my syllabi. It's your transformation I'm aiming at is the reality, not the map of the 4 or 5 page syllabus. Which I often go through with a curriculum committee, like what's going on here? What are the deliverables? Transformation. Then the other note, Kobiensky said, looking for meaning and depth with language is like looking for darkness with a flashlight. One of my faves of this year. I encountered Kobayansky is also the guy who said plants bind energy from the sun, even in the form of petroleum. Animals bind space. They bind space through their use of space in the now, looking to replicate, and humans bind time. To rebuild a 747 takes reading up on who came before you. It's often as in this Futures History book, we're often by our handlers, our overlords, or we're often our Zuckerberg, Bezos, Rockefellers, all those guys going to the Bilderberg meetings were, plotted how we can be behaviorally manipulated, and we're taught to not think of the future because it either looks too grim or depressing, or it's not our business to do that. Let better people do that. I say no. That's hogwash. You can also think as a time binding animal. You can think of the future. So my time is I got to do this gig. I got to look. There's Durer, Albert Durer, just amazing draftsman. These are all amazing draftsmen, but we have abstract elements such as the costumes. I like fun. In this whole thing, I came across this stewardess flipping up on this luggage thingy and laughing. Cool. We're like, costumes, costumes, costumes. What is it? Who is it? Men, women, transgender. I don't know. I don't care. Whatever looks cool. That's the first intuitive, empathetic response. Coming across something old and ancient, coming across a way of formatting reality, coming across, this is Giotto, this is one of the things repaired in the Assisi Chapel that was repaired by I think it was a Japanese corporation or consortium. So now they'll stop you if you photograph because the rights to that space, to that ancient 400 or 500-year-old painting belong to the company. So there are interesting, surreptitious things about the desire in neoliberal capitalist cultures about who owns it. Who owns it? It's the ownership is your potentiality to sell it. Who's selling it back? It's the exact same thing with the Sistine Chapel. Years ago, you could photograph, and now, since it's restored, it legally in this screwed up notion of Western ownership belongs to whoever helped restore it, with just soap and water, basically, and ear Q-tips, something like that. Back to the Platonic, back to ordering vision, which Vermeer, the great Dutch painters, hopped inside of camera obscuras. A lot of Americans did. Back to the fabrics. What's going on? Louis Fuller was very famous for taking these just fabric and recomposing the body in 4D space on a 3D film with the element of time, but was it flat? Yes, it was flat. It was film. She experimented not only with motion and the body and dance, but with film. And those Loewy Fuller fabric uses are amazing. Back to the Renaissance, back to the moderns doing the Renaissance with just composing the face with collars, hats, details, whiteness coming from blackness of the figure ground relation, back to a sculptural sense of the body. The very famous Leonardo da Vinci, the eyes are kind of doing that follow thing, yes. Back to Alexander McQueen, the grotesque, the beauty in the grotesque. One of the things I want to present as you move, as you fall down your rabbit holes and get back up again into reality, the reality of making stuff, the reality of reacting and creating on it and not binging TikTok, is the grotesque can be beautiful. We talk about grotesque with King Lear. You should have seen the King Lear movie with Anthony Hopkins. I finished another viewing of it last night. It does have that serious compounding of tropes and images. The Rota Fortuna, the Wheel of Fortune, nothing, the word nothing, nothing, nothing. It all adds up to nothing. Giving away the kingdom and having his three daughters die adds up to nothing. The Edmund and Edgar story, as Edmund lies dying in his brother's loving brother's arms, who just killed him, saying the wheel has come full circle. This adds up to nothing. What has ambition been for, about, with? Who have we served? More Renaissance, more dance, more Bauhaus dance, which this is another epochal change in epochs to the aperspectival way of looking at buildings and 3D form. Hey man, let's just simplify these forms. Let's get back to these platonic solids. Let's do the Renaissance painter architect one better. Let's talk about forms and therefore dance. There was a quest for modernist minimalist simplicity in the Bauhaus, which heightened a notion of use, which threw itself in the face of the petite bourgeoisie who had this Western notion of ownership. Hey, it's to own something, a house, a river, a piece of property, is to get rid of it, is to change, have the right to receive something else for it. And the Bauhausians were saying, let's get down to use. And it is the beginning of brutalism. Let's make the image, the ideas so brutal, so simple, so minimal that we're going to shake up the bourgeois who want the pretty things not in them for themselves and their own beauty bean counting, but with this notion of ownership is something to be gotten rid of. The potentiality, supposedly I own this co-op, but I know I don't. It's an ancient 100-year-old building. So ownership is very played with the Bauhaus. And here's the Bauhaus by Schlemmer. Performance, people wearing weird things, doing weird motions. I love the weirdness, but it is weird when you see it for the first time. This is what Gebser called aperspectival notions of compounded realities, different realities coming in. So we can see the kind of tension between the Renaissance perspectival, that we have an ordered space, the mythical, the magical, the mythical, the classical idea of the Greeks is they wanted to order everything. The architectural entablature is ordered and repeated. The three columns, the notion of the syllogism in Aristotle was meant to express limits. They did not want to go beyond the limit. The Magian space was this medieval and Islamic space of the world we see cannot be real. There's got to be a greater reality. What we see is flickering shadows in a cave, and this portends to a notion of consensus. Do you see it? Yes, I do. Okay. It was no mistake that religions flourished in the West during this era, the Catholic Church, Islam, all the people who took the Greek scriptures, both Catholic Church and more so Islam, preserved the great works of Plato and Aristotle and did it one better and said it's about the cave. The Renaissance mind wanted to get out of the cave bad, and then so too the aperspectival way of looking at things. We can get out of the cave by ordering stuff out there. There's a close cultural relationship between science, think Da Vinci and his flying machines and his works of war, his tanks and armed cannons and scythes that cut men down in the battlefield and all the wonderful, terrible things. And then going up to the aperspectival aspects, the Franco-Prussian War and the Paris Commune led to this idea that the chaos of war led to the proletarian tried to order their world. The powers that the oligarchy, powers that be, came in and crushed that experiment. There are plenty of experiments with labor, the working class rising up against the alienation from the products of their labor in the form of factories. This came out of this world like, guys, where's the human being in this? This is an ordering, but where's the human being? This is Rebecca Horn, a very interesting woman, artist of the late 60s, dealing with form, the body, fabric or structure, photographs. So in this one photo, we see yeah, a complexity, a compounding. Art is often deciding where to stop. Very unlike science, we're not going to stop until we get, cure cancer, until we blah, 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 and not see the interrelation. Finite math is the subject that all people wanting to go into finance to figure out how to beat the market. The market is an animal. The market is a beast, of an amalgamation of human wills and potentials and excesses and greed and things like that. But it's also now AI. You want to beat the house? You want to beat blackjack at Vegas? You got a 1% shot at that, and especially if it's hooked up to an AI. The artists are trying in their a perspectival way. This epoch, I think Gebster wrote his book in the 50s, so he didn't quite talk about what we say. We entered into a world of micro-modernity, of the internet has fractured us. We live in a fractured time. Yes, yes, and yes. Back to Plato, back to Renaissance, back to Renaissance Platonic, back to Botticelli. No, Fra Filippo Lippi. I think he was the teacher of Botticelli. You can see the influence. This is a young nun, as he was a priest, I think, who worked on his discipline in the monastic system, which was one of the ordered things out of the chaos of the Middle Ages. And I think this young, pretty nun, his model, became his lover. So talk about, or his wife, or had a baby by him or something. Talk about this idea of ordering the chaos of desire, the ordering the chaos of feeling primordial things and applying this extremely beautiful technical aspect. 20th century, fabric again, Renaissance again. Quickly, I know we're getting up in there. I want to close in a few minutes. Airplane cockpits, airplane simulation. Simulation is kind of an important research and artistic notion for me. I said theatrical performance space, any space, the space of gallery art, should, would, could be about debate. Not discourse, debate. Finding that art critic and saying, listen, in a non snarky way, I agree with this, what you're saying, I don't agree with that. So often we present things as a fait accompli, I'm rough on my French, that it's pre-run. Certainly, all colleges are run. Hey, it's pre-run. You better believe in the humanities. You better believe the propaganda, the dominant propaganda, or in the sciences, you better bean count until this thing is dead. Um, this physics, chemistry, biochemistry, even up until sociology, the idea that statistics is taking over the chaos, subconscious, collective subconscious of sociology. The airplane simulator. There's nothing more finite than a plane crash, I think. There's the black box that explain why it crashed, but then there's endless simulations that the human beings have to go through to fly these airplanes. A vision machine. They can run disasters. They can run a simulation. They can do all this. They can even run it in the face that there are now, they don't always tell us, machines actually flying our computers. The binary of human being against, with, for, collaborating with machine is there. Um, One of my contentions in I'll hark onto this neoliberal capitalist society is that we're running simulation. Now in physics, you say this is the whole universe has just been a big mathematical simulation. We say with whose agency, in whose mind, what being had this? Oh, we don't know. Ambiguity, the ability for, as Schrodinger said, the ability to know or feel or just assume, believe, or postulate that the cat is both alive and dead in the box. Um, the notion that, Schrodinger again, that life, replication, life, sex, desire, all of this is just our living beings' final efficient application to the second law of thermodynamics. With the Big Bang, it explodes, and we use life to further the natural entropy of that explosion. Years after Schrodinger, and I think within the past 20 years, we discovered mathematically ordered that the universe is actually expanding at the very edges of the Big Bang. So, what is life? What is life in desire and beauty and embracing both? The cat is alive and dead. We're both figure ground. We're both ancient and modern. We have perspectival and aperspectival. This is the end of the perspectival attitude toward life, to me, is the simulation, which my research direction is AR, VR, metaverse studies, hypey name, but it's everyone kind of gets it. What was You can even see it in the struggle of the regular, flawed, and even illusory Kool-Aid drinking banking world and cryptocurrency or NFTs. NFTs, non fungible tokens, are an attempt to whittle away or de-skill the art market. That anything you do could have its other world, could exist in servers running endlessly, which have to be connected, which use an incredible amount of energy. Notion of growth that somehow we created in this Borgesian world. We have a map laid over the territory, the one-to-one scaling. He has that great Luis Borges, the great Argentinian surrealist, fascist apologist, kind of. I often heard lefties talking about him. This is a bunch of crap. But it is really interesting worlds, really complex. This story had that the king hired a cartographer to make a map that is as big as his kingdom. Again, Kobayansky's saying the map is not the territory, and also we're looking for profundity. Don't look for it with language. That's like looking for darkness with a flashlight. It's an embracing. Anyway, this map was done. It was immensely expensive. It was vain. It was filled with hubris of technology. And interesting, they let it decay. And so at the edges of the world, the kingdom, they'd find edges of the map still preserved. The middle of it had been gone. Very beautiful story. This Airplane simulator as a device is your VR as a device. We're entering the rabbit holes of simulation. What are these worlds? They're chaotic, they're compounded. We're reading from my other class a book on the internet, talks about procedularity. We don't know what, it starts off with mysteries. We don't know what it is, but it proceeds. Just like the Big Bang. We don't know what life is, but it seems to react to the Big Bang. It seems to react to entropy. Um, uh, and so does the simulation. Some people live in simulations their whole life. The recent beginning epoch obsession, 90s to me were obsessed with vampires, users, psychotics, whatever, who fed off, oh, there's the bell, fed off the energy of others. There's a concomitant image trope in our society about the zombie, that these are the undead living in simulations, that this is a real life when it's not really. And the Walking Dead, all these symptomatic things of World War Z, these obviously portend to worlds in the near future because of the numbers, the Malthusian meltdown, the idea that this is a collision of the perspectival mentality contra the aperspectival. Where do we go? Do we go underground, as in the machine stops, time machine, Matrix? Where do we retreat to? What are the edges of the kingdom where the map is? Simulation. Just a few theaters are traditionally places of this since primordial times, certainly with the Greeks and the Romans. Greeks really perfected it in terms of a modern internet or a way to manipulate whole populations. Manipulation was a large part of theater in the Greek era. Brushes, yes. Fashion, yes. Renaissance ordering of chaos, ostensibly religious, but also mythological. More brushes, modernity, modern cigarette in this Renaissance configuration, yes. Whatever appeals to you, get a file going, a reaction. I want you to also um, um do a presentation on a space that appealed to you, impacted you, made you wonder, made you see this contradiction between um, clarity and chaos, a binary between beauty and the grotesque, perhaps, and all these other good things. A perspectival, the Bauhaus, making modern. The burqa is the modern representation of the Gioconda. Back to the airplane. This is a real one, where reality impacts simulation is the body. We can't simulate our lives and then suddenly get COVID and go like, where did that come from? I don't know, or get cancer or something. You mean I'm not going to live forever? We impact our lives in terms of our relationships, families, friends, intimates. Oh, I'm in love. Oh, this is an awful feeling because I'm so scared. I feel so out of control. This notion of love is chaotic. Let me order it. Let me read a bunch of self-help books. Let me get this into shape. And we find out we can't because it defies that. A house. This is not something I'm living in it to get rid of. I'm not thinking of future dwellers here. I am thinking of myself, my use, my sense of well being. I want to be in this space and use it now. I am the time binding animal, but I want to bind the past with the future and not live in this continual frustrating now, which often the internet is about, and to end up the what's TikTok's about. Oh, this one's got to be better. Oh, this one's got to be better. They aren't. They're all the same. Car crashes, twerking, cute dog faces, what cats do, traffic accidents and fail films, of thinly veiled narcissistic portrayals of men, women, and whatever, what babies do, is to keep you in this, the tyranny of the present. That tyranny is forged out of the tyranny that the perspectival Renaissance artists created, what the aperspectival thing, hey man, it's all relative. That aspect in physics and art in our lives, which is this notion, a great notion of diversity, but also where is identity? We talked about the earlier things. And what does the future look like? I go down the rabbit hole of research. Look at that. That's beautiful. And these machines, and again, the vision machines, more simulation in a house with three screens. The Mona Lisa again, dance, what you can do with the body, Bauhaus, perspective, more creation of the Renaissance with Photoshop, a model, filtering. What are filters? Simulation or reality? What if filters are reality? The use, the tension and use of fabrics is just endlessly fascinating to me. And the meter is ticking. I do have to do this gig. It is a work in progress. I hope to elicit a lot of discussion with my colleague, with my future self, with my audiences, with my other collaborators. But I also want to keep doing this, like Da Vinci or Michelangelo or Bach or all the guys who said, "Oh no, I'm not a genius. I'm just infinitely curious." It's a strange quote from Einstein. Said the most important thing to be is curious. It's not such a strange quote. We have a society now of zero sum winners losers, bean counters, that looks to the service provider as just give me the answers and I'll throw it up at you. New World. New World, and these are, in a strange way, gang, the answers. Um, in a strange way, more theater costumes, more vision, more Renaissance, more textures. This has been a lecture about the answers, which are fragmented. Rebecca Horn, this is just gorgeous. Late 60s, incredible woman, performance artist, dealing with picture planes, dealing with her nice body, dealing with a notion of objectification, dealing with simple applications of structure, dealing with time. Let's end up there. See you in the next lecture.